The first thing my parents did after being reborn into the year 2000 was borrow money from every relative they had to buy 3 apartments in City A. The second thing was to leave me, barely a month old, at the orphanage's doorstep, and then adopt the prodigy who had bullied me in my previous life. Watching them walk away, I didn't shed a single tear. Instead, I used my infantile laughter to attract the attention of the orphanage aunties. "Look at that, what a darling child, how could the parents abandon them? They must have some difficulties at home." No one knew that my debt-ridden parents were about to become the new rich. In my previous life, my parents kept me tied to their side. The application to my dream school was revoked, the chance I fought for to study abroad was lost, the person I loved and wanted to marry was torn away. But in the end, our family's life only got worse, and my parents blamed me for being useless and dragging them down. "Why can't you be capable like other people's children? If it weren't for raising you, we'd have been living the good life long ago." They smothered me to death in their resentment, then killed themselves out of guilt. In this life, they decisively abandoned me, wanting a child worthy of their standards. But later, my parents, who had finally gotten what they wanted, cried and begged me to look at them one more time. Seeing my parents frantically buying a house, I knew they had been reborn too. Dad put on the jacket he loved in his youth, and Mom applied the blazing red lipstick she hadn't touched in a long time. It let them return to the past as they wished. But the lingering tightness around my throat still reminded me of the fact that my parents had killed me. In my last life, my parents always said that if it weren't for me, their lives would be so much better. It was because of me that our family had fallen into poverty. So shy and insecure, I only remembered one thing growing up: my parents sacrificed so much for me, so I had to work hard to repay their kindness. When I was at school, I couldn't afford to offend a single classmate. My parents had to go away to work to earn money to support me, and if I had conflicts with classmates, there would be no one to stand up for me. When my parents came back and were summoned to the school, they would scold me instead. "Why are you so troublesome? We work hard to pay for your education so you can learn, not to cause problems." From then on, I would not hit back or answer insults. I endured endless bullying throughout elementary and middle school. When it came time for university, because I studied hard and my grades were fairly good, I could have applied to a prestigious school in another province. But my parents said they were worried I would have no one to look after me far away, forcibly removed my choices, and I could only attend a local ordinary university. When it came time to pay the tuition, my parents changed their tune. "We don't have any special skills, raising you has already cost us a lot. You'll have to pay your own tuition. If it really doesn't work out, then don't go. What's the use of a girl studying so much? Getting out into society earlier means you can earn money sooner. We're only doing what's best for you." But I wanted to study to improve our family's living conditions, to let Mom and Dad enjoy a better life sooner. Later, by applying for student loans and doing part-time jobs, I barely managed to pay for my own university. When I started working, I fought tooth and nail to get an overseas assignment, only for my parents to come to the company and make a scene, even threatening to kill themselves. "We raised you all these years with difficulty, how can you be so disobedient? When you grew up, your wings hardened. Do you want to fly far away and leave us behind? Truly unfilial, a heartless wretch." Later, the opportunity for me to go abroad was snatched by a colleague who targeted me, and the company also judged that I couldn't balance work and family, so they fired me. Without a strong resume, the jobs I found became worse and worse. In the end, I simply took a cashier job near my home so I could better look after my family. When I reached marriageable age, I was lucky to meet a boyfriend who shared my values. His family was very supportive of us, even willing to pay to buy a marital home on my side of town and put both our names on the deed. But my parents were dissatisfied. They demanded a bride price of 888,000 yuan and wouldn't allow me to bring him into our little family. My boyfriend's family, after much deliberation, broke up with me, found a girlfriend from a comparable family, and the two families pooled money to buy an apartment in the provincial capital. They married soon after. I was devastated, diagnosed with depression, and lost a lot of weight. My parents took the opportunity to lecture me. Men aren't reliable. If he can break up with you, it means he doesn't love you that much. Your natal family is your only support. Why get married at all? Isn't it better to earn money and keep it in your own family? From then on I gave up on love, kept to myself, and focused on taking care of the household. Later the convenience store by our door closed, and the few other part-time jobs all started only hiring young people. I had no job, no friends, and no partner. I might as well stay home all day, doing laundry, cooking, and tending to two 40-something parents who had effectively retired long ago. Without my income, the food at home got worse by the day. When they saw that a nearby welfare home had produced an orphan girl who became a CEO, my parents finally couldn't hold back and smashed a bowl. They began to berate me mercilessly. Why can't you be like other kids, so capable? We worked so hard to raise you, we might as well have raised a dog. It was all because of you that we became the laughingstock of the neighborhood. If I'd known at birth, I should have strangled you. When my parents actually strangled me to death, I didn't even think of fighting back. I never reacted until I was already dead. Mom, Dad, didn't you love me very much? Why did you kill me? After I died, they, stricken with guilt, burned charcoal to suicide as well. But to my surprise, all three of us were reborn. This time, my parents were determined to change their fate. After buying a house, they didn't hesitate to abandon me and adopt an orphan who in her past life could become a female CEO. And I no longer wanted to be treated like an empty tool for their old age, barely surviving. After the aunties at the welfare home took me in, everyone was captivated by my unusually obedient behavior. Some went to make milk, some changed my diaper, and one of the older sisters brought a toy to soothe me. The place was warm and comfortable, the slogans on the walls displaying the warmth and responsibility of a socialist country. Make the children who are lying down sit up, make the children who are sitting stand up, make the children who are standing walk, make the children who are walking run. It feels like it's been ages since I've had such a good day. I'm so comfortable I could almost cry. For as long as I can remember in my last life, my parents always compared me to the kids from the welfare home. If it weren't for your parents to raise you, you'd be like those wild kids in the orphanage, beaten every day, never enough to eat or wear, and when you die nobody would care. If you don't behave, we won't keep you, we'll let you become one of those wild children. In my parents' description, the orphanage was like hell. I was terrified. From then on I became even more sensible, afraid that a single mistake would get me abandoned. But after moving in, I discovered that in my previous life I had it better than an orphan. Just after being reborn back to infancy, I realized my mother had no breast milk, there wasn't even formula at home, and the congee simmering on the stove already smelled burnt. I was placed in a wooden box, left with flies buzzing around my face. No wonder I grew up sickly and frail. My height stopped at 1.5 meters and never grew any further. My parents even said I was picky when I was little, this I wouldn't eat, that I wouldn't eat. It turned out that when I was young I simply hadn't been loved properly. The caregivers at the welfare home were official staff, they were not the caricatures vilified in tawdry films and TV shows, but dutiful and conscientious in looking after us. All the children's food, clothing, and expenses at the welfare home were paid for by the state. The staff even gave me a pleasant-sounding name. Stella. She said, from now on I will be a child of the state. I don't need to achieve great things, but I must keep dreaming and strive to be a good person. I grew up in the orphanage until I was 3. During that time many volunteers and kind uncles and aunts came to show their love, seeing that I was precocious and healthy, they all wanted to adopt me. But each time I gave the chance to be adopted to my other brothers and sisters. They were all real children, even though life in the orphanage was good, deep down they longed for family, for a mother and father. I was different, the life I had then was already heaven to me. I never knew that children could eat meat and eggs too. I wasn't being spoiled, my body just grew stronger and stronger. I also didn't know that children didn't have to do so much work. The aunties in the kitchen cooked delicious meals, the older girls who felt unwell received special sickroom dishes. What surprised me most was that children could celebrate birthdays, and it didn't steal years from adults. The birthday cakes I had as a child really tasted sweeter than those I would eat when grown. When I was 6, I was assigned a room with another girl my age who had a disability in her legs. In my past life, I didn't have my own room, even the bathroom had to be shared with people outside. In this life, the two of us little girls actually had a private bathroom. When I was 7, Mother Lily from the orphanage arranged for me to start primary school. Mother Lily told all the children that as long as you wanted to study, the state would pay for it forever, even if you wanted to study all the way to a doctorate, the state would keep funding you. If you can get in, we can afford to support you. I was still attending the same public primary school from my previous life, but in this life my spine was much straighter. My clothes and shoes were brand new, my backpack wasn't one of the hand-me-downs from relatives. I even had the pocket money that was distributed uniformly. That sense of inferiority that had seeped from my bones had completely vanished over the past few years. I could even step forward willingly and look after the other brothers and sisters from the orphanage. Seeing me so confident, ordinary kids didn't dare bully me and even rushed to be my friend. That lasted until Tiffany appeared. Tiffany is the prodigy my parents adopted. She really is very smart. On the first grade exams only 2 students got perfect scores in every subject. One was me, the reborn, and the other was her. In my last life, Tiffany stood out like that. She looked down on me for being short and poorly dressed, and she constantly ostracized and bullied me. In this lifetime, the two of us still clashed in presence. But it was clear Tiffany wasn't as confident as she had been before. My parents had bought a house in City A, but based on past experience, its value hadn't risen much yet. The family owed a lot of external debts and simply couldn't give Tiffany a good life. At that time, my parents were still working away from home to pay back relatives. Tiffany wasn't satisfied that I scored the same as her and humiliated me in public. "Stella, I saw it all, you came out of the orphanage, you're an orphan. My parents say the orphanage is full of unwanted wild kids. You're just a pathetic thing, stop pretending to be something you're not." The other classmates were still young and couldn't judge right from wrong, so they followed Tiffany's lead and jeered. "So you're an orphan, huh? No father, no mother, no one wants you. How pitiful." The girl from the orphanage who went to school with me bowed her head, already upset. Tiffany smirked triumphantly and even ripped up my perfect test paper. "What's a wild kid doing in school anyway? You should be out on the street begging." She was waiting for me to be mortified beyond repair. I laughed instead. Then I went straight to the principal's office and squeezed out 2 big sacks of tears. "Uncle Principal, someone said I'm a wild child." Our group of orphans had already been mentioned to the principal before enrollment, put under special attention. The principal was a cadre at the Jinka level who had even volunteered at welfare homes, not the kind of greasy private enterprise boss you see in films. An appalling incident of an orphan being bullied occurred, and the principal took it very seriously. "These are the nation's children. Bearing the party's name, how could they be stray kids?" The principal immediately called the welfare home. The welfare home promptly arranged for 2 volunteer parents to come to the school and back me up. They hovered around my girlfriends and me with tender concern, giving us psychological counseling, afraid that we might be left with any traces of trauma. "Children, don't be afraid. You have the support of the whole of society, there's no need to feel ashamed. Behind you stand thousands upon thousands of taxpayers." Tiffany stood in the corner of the office, looking a little helpless. Her parents had no time to come to school and defend her. She did have parents, but at that moment the one who was left alone was no longer me. The principal called an emergency meeting and instructed all the teachers, saying the matter must be dealt with seriously, care for the orphans' mental health and stamp out the perverse trend of bullying orphan students. I was appointed class monitor by the homeroom teacher, and the classmates who had once mocked me all realized their mistake and apologized. Only Tiffany remained like a clown. She kept putting trash in my desk and writing insults in my textbooks. I never fought back privately, each time I reported her to the teachers. Over time, no matter how well Tiffany studied, the teachers all began to dislike this child who liked to bully others. A week later, her parents, who worked out of town, finally found time to come to the school. When they saw Tiffany, without asking any questions they insisted on mixed doubles. Then they began reciting the same lines they had told me in a past life. "We work so hard out there to earn money for you. If you don't study properly and cause trouble, how can you face us?" No matter how much of a prodigy Tiffany was, she was still a child who had never seen the world. She simply couldn't withstand her parents' emotional pressure. Coupled with the gossip of her classmates, the once proud and cheerful Tiffany suddenly felt more ashamed than an orphan. After my parents finished beating Tiffany, they finally remembered to ask which classmate she had a conflict with. The homeroom teacher pointed at me. When my parents' gazes fell on me, my heart gave a sharp, painful jolt. They are my parents by birth, and they are also the ones who tried to kill me. In this life, there will be no further ties between us. I controlled my expression, betraying no abnormality, every move measured and composed. My parents stood there stunned, their faces full of surprise. "It's Stella, that damned girl, she seems different from her last life." My parents whispered softly, but in the end they didn't come to bother me. When school let out, I walked back to the orphanage with my girlfriends, but at the corner we saw my parents with Tiffany, carrying lots of brand new books and stationery. Seeing us pass by, my parents immediately began loudly scolding Tiffany. "See how good your parents are to you? They hit you because they love you. Those children in the orphanage long for parents' care and don't have it. Who would buy them study materials? They're all a bunch of poor things. You must be obedient and repay your parents well, or we'll throw you there to be one of those wild kids, understand?" Tiffany wiped her tears and nodded. My friends and I said nothing and hurried back to the welfare home. The Education Bureau had just donated a number of facilities to our welfare home: a piano room, an art studio, a basketball court, and a table tennis court. We didn't have time to watch my parents show off. We were busy going back to join our friends for extracurricular activities. The person who taught us piano was a renowned master from the provincial capital. I had seen him on TV in my previous life. With Tiffany at my house, she probably didn't get the chance to hear a master perform. After the incident at the start of term, my school life through elementary school was very comfortable. In the welfare home I had my own dedicated study space and was no longer hampered by family chores. My studies improved more and more, and every year I was top of the grade. In my spare time I even tutored the brothers and sisters around me so we could all improve together. Reading can change your fate. As long as these children are willing to keep studying, the state will keep supporting us. But things with Tiffany were different from the last life. She was born smarter than me, so our parents' lectures cut her more deeply. Part of her felt that her parents loved her, yet another part doubted herself, trapped in a particularly twisted state. After I entered the middle school division as the top student, I found Tiffany started hanging around with local troublemakers outside school. A single bottle of cheap soda was enough to coax her into acting cute and sweet. Tiffany's grades plummeted. In the first year after entering the high school division, I was being honored at a school-wide assembly for my excellent results, while Tiffany, because of messing around with those kids, nearly got persuaded to withdraw from the school. My parents suddenly discovered that, in this lifetime, I had somehow become so outstanding. After school, when I returned to the welfare home, I saw my parents arguing with the director, the woman who had become my mother there. When she noticed me, Mom forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Stella, do you want to come home with us? We're willing to adopt you. From now on, you'll have a father and mother." Watching my parents trying so hard to act the part, I smiled. They'd seen Tiffany struggle in her studies while I was shining brightly, and that frightened them. They were afraid I would turn out more successful than Tiffany in the future. That would be a loss for them. Adopting me was nothing more than buying an extra layer of insurance. I shook my head and hugged Director Mom tightly. "I don't want to be adopted. The welfare home is my family, this is where my parents are." Seeing my parents' faces fall, Director Mom explained gently. "Our Stella has always been a sensible, well-behaved child. Many families have wanted to adopt her, but Stella refused to go. Now she's grown up and doesn't need to be adopted, and your family has already adopted one child, so you no longer meet our home's adoption criteria. When my parents saw me refuse, they instantly became a little angrily ashamed. Ungrateful child, what kind of future will you have? My parents left, and I worked even harder than before. In my last life, I also thought I was the one without prospects. But now in the orphanage, these parents who aren't related by blood all say that Stella is the most talented child, that Stella will surely grow into a useful young person for society. I didn't want to disappoint them. I buried myself in my studies, winning scholarships by the handful, and the other children at the orphanage all looked up to me as a model. They had once been a bit unruly, kids who wanted to go out and make it in the world, but now they'd all changed their minds. They were going to study until they wore the books out. By senior year, housing prices had at last shot up exponentially to absurd levels. My parents, who owned 3 apartments in City A, finally held their heads high and became local celebrities. Relatives and friends who had looked down on my parents before now spent their days drinking and gathering at our house to flatter them, saying my parents were far-sighted. My parents only smiled without speaking. It was luck, all luck. Tiffany also regained some confidence and flaunted her wealth at school every day. The houses in City A, you'll never be able to afford one in your whole lives. My family has 3. Tiffany completely gave up on studying. After all, 3 houses in City A were enough to support her for life. Why bother putting herself through the hardship of studying? When the college entrance exam came, I was admitted to a university as the top scorer in the entire province. After they learned I was an orphan, the school waived all my tuition, and the local government and my high school each awarded me an additional scholarship. I set aside money for my daily expenses and donated the rest to the welfare home. The fathers and mothers there were proud of me and even threw me a celebration for my academic advancement. Here, I have no blood relatives. But every person here is my family. Things didn't go so well for Tiffany. She gave up on studying early. Her Gaokao scores couldn't get her into even a local regular university, so she had to pay top prices to attend a private college just to get a diploma. But private university tuition isn't cheap. My parents had 3 apartments, but because the market hasn't peaked yet, selling them hastily would cost a lot. So Tiffany never went to college in this life. She went out to work early to earn money. Her parents still tried to comfort her. You're born to be a CEO, working is just doing market research early. But unlike her parents' fantasies, this Tiffany seemed crushed by life, showing not the slightest sign of getting rich. As for me, I'd already become a local celebrity, the orphan prodigy who came out of the welfare home. My parents finally couldn't sit still anymore and came to look for me again. This time, they even revealed their true identities. Child, we're actually your real mom and dad. Blood ties can't be broken, the people at the welfare home are outsiders, we're the real family. I asked just one question and sent the would-be reclaiming parents packing. How did you lose me in the first place? My parents wanted to make up a lie, saying I was lost. But Director Mom said I was sent to the welfare home as an infant. Do newborns get lost? The expressions on my parents' faces were priceless. They couldn't admit the wrongs they'd done to me in my childhood, so they left in dejection. They weren't hung up on whether I acknowledged them, because the year was about to become 2018. Although housing prices hadn't yet peaked, my parents ignored the relatives' objections, sold an apartment, and opened a mask factory. Where we come from, ordinary people do not wear masks. Everyone said my parents were insane. Only I knew my parents were trying to make a fortune. A fortune that would break everyone's heart. I also knew the timing, but I wouldn't do it. Because I am a child of the state. In my previous life, the welfare home lost many staff and children. The horror even made the news. Across the country, there were fellow citizens grieving lost relatives and lost friends, drowning in despair. This time I will do everything in my power to stop this disaster. In fact, that seed was planted in my heart from a young age. The subject I favored has always been biochemistry, and when I reached university I actively sought out opportunities to join a research institute. I devoted myself to studying viral pharmacology, working diligently on experiments every day and reporting my research ideas to the academicians at the university's research institute. Naturally, some people thought my proposals were fanciful. I did not give up and kept reporting upward. At last, an elderly academician accepted my report and began to set up a dedicated laboratory ahead of schedule. He said only one sentence. "Our children now live in times of peace. They do not know that the imperialists' desire to destroy us never dies. To strike us, anything from a viral war to a bacterial attack is possible. Young people thinking ahead is good." There were solutions. I didn't forget to use my school's connections. I made a trip to Ajo to spread ideas about virus prevention and control to local officials and citizens. The mayor did my advisor a favor and organized several full-scale disinfection drills. Even if I couldn't completely prevent a disaster, at least this time we were no longer unarmed. By the winter break of 2019, the other children from the welfare home had all gone back, but I applied to stay in the lab. When I called Director Mom, I was still scrolling through the news with my hand. "Mom, tell the kids to hold off on the study trip to Ajo for now, and don't bring back the children who are studying in Ajo this year. Wait a bit." Director Mom didn't understand what I meant, but she knew I was a reliable child, so she did as I asked. Finally, in one of the news feeds, I came across an item that made my heart race. Suspected infectious disease outbreak in Ajo. I called immediately to notify the research team members and, with the new drug we had developed, we set off for Ajo. At the same time, my parents' mask factory began increasing production. These masks aren't nearly enough. Add another production line and run it overnight. The chance to make a fortune has finally come. When we arrived in Ajo, fortunately, thanks to the earlier publicity, all the departments took it seriously right away. Although many people were still infected, the institute's new drug could be deployed quickly. When the leaders in City A learned of the situation here, they also quickly sent armed police to maintain order. Things were much better than I had expected. While helping at the hospital, I also saw a familiar face. Sister Stella. He was a boy from my welfare home who had just turned 18, with only one arm, yet he had been admitted to a university in Ajo. On holidays he always took odd jobs outside. I hadn't expected to see him here. "Sister Stella, I'm here to volunteer. From childhood we've been raised by kind people in society, so now it's only natural for me to give back." I felt a warm glow in my heart. He was a child with a strong sense of social responsibility. After everyone's relentless efforts, the situation was finally brought under effective control. The disease did not spread widely. The few cases brought back to their hometowns were quickly contained. In this lifetime, the country is safe and life goes on as usual. My parents, who had been frantically making masks, were stunned. To earn more money they had even taken out loans to expand production. But they found that this time, people didn't need masks as much. Unable to pay the remaining balance, my parents' mask factory didn't last long and went bankrupt. To pay off the debts, they had no choice but to sell another house. Tiffany had originally planned to ride on her parents' shoulders and become a second-generation rich, but she didn't expect her parents to end up losing another apartment. Quick-witted, she had her parents sign a blank document, then sold their last apartment in City A and used the proceeds as a down payment plus loans to buy 4 more apartments. Property is the most valuable asset. You have to get on the property ladder even if it means taking loans. Her parents had been reborn. They knew that housing prices followed economic cycles. Even if no disaster happened this time, the boom wouldn't last long. People were already near their limit. Tiffany bit off more than she could chew and dragged the whole family onto the loan repayment train. Mom and Dad wanted to sell the 4 newly purchased apartments, to cut off the arm to save the life. But the signatures Tiffany had tricked them into giving had already handed the properties away. Even if they wanted to sell, they had no right to. They could only bitterly continue repaying the loans together. But the day of collapse finally arrived. Tiffany's 4 apartments had all been bought with very low down payments. Now that payments had been stopped, the only option was to accept foreclosure and let it pay off the debts. Mom and Dad are barely in their 40s, yet white hair has already appeared on their heads in this lifetime. After 20 plus years of hard work, they end up worse off than in their previous life. Because I stood out in Ajo, I received a special national commendation and, upon graduating from university, went straight to the institute to take an important post. Later I went abroad to study for a doctorate and became the youngest academician in the institute. When I returned to the country, the first thing I did was go back to the welfare home to visit the parents who raised me. Unexpectedly, after hearing about my achievements, my biological parents actually contacted a TV station. They went on public TV with false accusations, saying I'm an unfilial daughter who went abroad to enjoy myself and failed to support my parents. Heartless men are often scholars. What use is such a high degree if you've lost the basics of being human? Being the youngest female academician made my position especially sensitive. I was instantly thrust into the eye of the storm. Seeing my parents looking so pitiful, everyone's first response was to condemn me from a moral high ground. Someone so young holding that position, maybe she's an academic concubine, using her looks to get ahead. First be a person, then do scholarship. A refined selfish person who doesn't even care for her own parents, what good can be in her head? The academy should strip her of her academician title and she'll behave. Come, let's report her together, we can't let people like this hog resources. But I wasn't the least bit flustered. If there was no upbringing, where would filial support come from? The online attacks against me began to spread rapidly. Better to give birth to a piece of char siu than you. You should have been strangled right after birth. Does anyone have her address? Let's go to her place and pay her a visit. After learning of the situation, the institute issued a statement at once to clear my name. All of the above claims are untrue. Academician Stella passed the political background check. But that still couldn't stop my parents from continuing to smear me. This is a paternity test, she is our daughter. We did not lie. I don't know where she dug up the connections, trying to shut the mouths of netizens who seek justice. Since my parents' house was foreclosed, they were insolvent and had completely become deadbeats. Tiffany worked away from home, and the money she earned wasn't sent to them promptly. At some point, they stole my hair and even produced a paternity test. It seemed they'd decided I would be the one to pay their debts. They privately sent me a letter. If I didn't want my reputation ruined, I must acknowledge them, fulfill my filial duties, and send them abroad to live in a villa. I ignored it and instead contacted the TV station. Hello, I'm the protagonist of the recent scandal about a female academician abandoning her biological parents. I want to do a live broadcast to explain myself to the public. On the day of the livestream, I was dressed in an expensive suit, my hair combed immaculate, looking respectable. My parents, by contrast, looked worse than homeless. They were the ones who first gained sympathy. The insults aimed at me in the chat never stopped. A wolf in human skin. What else is there for a person like that to say in her defense? Look at her, she doesn't look like one of us at all. She's full of those foreign theories, no wonder she looks down on her own parents. Even the host's words, between the lines and outright, were all accusations aimed at me. Academician Stella, there are no perfect parents in the world. No matter what they've done, they gave you life. You're so successful now, how can you abandon filial piety? Seeing so many people siding with them, my parents ramped up the sob story, desperately showing how hard they'd had it these past years. At that moment, a few people burst into the studio holding videotapes. They shouted loudly, Stella is not their child. They have a child they raised themselves. Stella is our child. It was my Lily mom from the orphanage, Mom Lu, Dad Song, Dad He, Sister Duan, Brother Fong. They all came to testify for me. The videotape recorded me from childhood through adolescence, how I grew up in the orphanage. There are images of me turning over for the first time, of me taking my first steps, and of me sitting obediently in the dining hall, feeding the disabled children beside me. The director, Mother, said that originally these materials were kept confidential to protect the orphan's physical and mental health and were not released to the public. Only when an orphan grows up can they decide for themselves whether to make them public. The director, who was like a mother, kept speaking and then broke into tears. When Stella came to the welfare home, she was only a month old. I could never understand what kind of cruel parents would abandon such an adorable child. They abandoned their own child, and yet they once came to the home to adopt other children. They ignored Stella. What right do they have now to demand that Stella support them? Looking at the childhood I had in this life, I cried too. Not because I felt sorry for myself, but out of tears of happiness. In this life, with so many kind fathers and mothers, I am already the happiest child in the world. Before everyone present, as a witness, I knelt on the stage to these fathers and mothers who were not related to me by blood. Dad, Mom, thank you for giving your youth to raise Stella. I have become the kind of adult you wanted me to be, someone useful to society. You can be at ease now. My parents helped me up, and we clung to each other, crying. The paternity test clutched in their hands suddenly felt like a joke. The audience in the hall and the viewers watching the screen all understood at once. So she was an orphan raised in a welfare home after all. I remember now, years ago there was that orphan who became the top scorer in the imperial exams, right? It was her, Stella. She was the champion. It wouldn't be surprising if she became an academician. That's not all. According to the latest reports, when an epidemic broke out in Ajo back then, it was thanks to academician Stella's pre-developed new drug that the damage wasn't worse. She's a national hero. My story quickly went viral across the internet and moved countless people to tears. The taxes I pay should be used for things like this. Academician Stella is admirable, truly a child of the nation. She has achieved what she has, and I played a part in that. Academician Stella was abandoned at such a young age. Her biological parents should be held accountable for the crime of abandonment. People finally realized this. The trial of the parents formally began. According to the ruling of the relevant authorities, after abandoning me, the parents then orchestrated an online mob, maliciously smearing a national hero. The criminal circumstances were extremely serious, and both were sentenced to 5 years in prison. But their adopted daughter Tiffany not only never visited once, she even started streaming online. She poured out the pain of her original family, rode the wave of the internet, and overnight became a major influencer. 5 years later, her parents were released from prison and wanted Tiffany to support them. Sure enough, Tiffany was the kind of ruthless woman who could have been a CEO in a past life. She wrote a letter severing ties. You drove me into depression. If the law requires me to support you, I'll only give you the monthly minimum. Not a single penny more. If you keep forcing me, my depression will come back. Tiffany's fans sprang into action at once, refusing to let her parents come near Tiffany anymore. Her parents, desperate and out of options, thought of me again. By then I was representing the country abroad at the World Health Conference. Apart from watching the news, they had no chance to see me in person anymore. Until the new director of the welfare home called me on video. Stella, your birth parents were found frozen to death on a snowy night at the gate of our welfare home. The security footage captured their last words. They said they knew they were wrong and wanted to see you once more, asking their daughter Stella not to blame them. The Civil Affairs Office has already taken the bodies for cremation. Do you want to come back and see them one last time? I shook my head at the other end of the video call. No, it's fine. Work is very busy here. By the way, make sure Grandma Director and her family take the supplements I bought for them, okay? And Lily's mother, she always hates the bitterness of traditional medicine when she's being treated. I've already bought candied fruit and put it in the second drawer of the living room cabinet. But don't let her eat too much, it can raise her blood sugar. And about the study abroad trips planned for the kids, I've already handled the visas here. They'll come over in groups, and someone will meet them when they arrive. The dean smiled and agreed one by one. Don't worry, everything's been arranged. Just take care of yourself out there. Everyone's looking forward to you coming home to reunite. I hung up the phone, feeling warm inside. As for my parents' dying words, what a joke, what do they have to do with me? I'm not their Stella. I am the nation's Stella. Under the party's illumination, I work hard to shine like Stella, guarding the beautiful society that raised me.